Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Paul Hughes, and I serve as the Senior Advisor for International Security here at the United States Institute of Peace. I'm pleased to welcome you to the Institute on this auspicious occasion. Congratulations to Croatia and the European Union on this new remarkable partnership. It is a great achievement for the Union. It is in all of everyone's best interests that this has taken place. Many of you may know USIP from our work abroad. Others of you may know of us because of this beautiful building. But USIP was put on the map as a peace builder during the Balkan Wars. And we've had many activities in the region over the last 2 decades. These range from grants to large-scale projects. In fact, some of USIP's very first in-country projects were in the Western Balkans. And I see many in the audience today who played a role in that work. Our role today is much smaller, largely in part to the great gains made by the countries themselves and the positive impact the European Union has played in the region. In my experience as a peace builder and as a peacekeeper, both at USIP and as a soldier, I've seen the importance of partnerships and alliances. Partnerships are absolutely critical for a country and its people to meet today's challenges. USIP knows that today the threats to peace, stability, and prosperity transcend borders and national capacities, thus making it very difficult for any one country to unilaterally manage. Only by binding together and working towards common objectives in mutually supportive ways can these challenges be overcome and progress made towards peace in the region. Alliances and partnerships are particularly vital for a country like Croatia, which was born in a violent time marked by numerous refugees and internally displaced people, a shattered state, and a wrecked economy. Today marks a major turning point away from that history, and Croatia's entry into the EU is recognition of the impressive political, social, judicial, and economic gains made over the last 18 years. Again, congratulations to Croatia and its people on your incredible achievements. To quote Irish politician John Bruton, "The European Union is the world's most successful invention for advancing peace." I think the European Union and USIP would agree that Croatia now stands as an example for the region on what peace-building mechanisms, to include a trusted rule of law system and practiced human rights, can help a country achieve. Croatia has arisen out of a horrible conflict, which Ambassador Galbraith can speak more to, and is joining a union created for peace. Croatians are now not only responsible for upholding the political, social, judicial, and economic gains made over the past decade, but are also poised to advance these ideals among their neighbors and other states in the Western Balkan region. Hopefully, the rigid borders erected in the region during the breakup of the Yugoslav Republic can now be reconfigured like those that exist today between Slovenia and Croatia. I hope today's discussion will elaborate both on the past and the future of Croatia, and I look forward to hearing how we can engage partnerships for a greater goal of peace. My congratulations once again, both to Croatia and the European Union. I will now turn these proceedings over to Viola Gienger of USIP, who will introduce today's panels.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us today, all distinguished guests and our very distinguished panel. Very much appreciate the opportunity to discuss how Croatia has come to this point, the ramifications of this day today, what it means for both the region and the European Union in the future. I'll just ask make a few housekeeping comments first. If everyone could just triple check your cell phones and make sure they are on silent. And please do remember that we are being webcast, and I also welcome the audience who's watching our webcast today. We will have plenty of opportunity for questions after our panelists make opening remarks. And I would invite everyone to prepare your questions, and then please wait for a microphone to be brought to you when the time comes for a Q&A. When we finish at the end of this, and I'll repeat this toward the end, those who have dots on their name tags, if you could please exit down near the stage here on your right at the end of the proceedings. And the rest of you, please exit up at the top of the auditorium. I'll make some brief introductions, but all of you, I hope, picked up a copy of the bios for our very august panel here, who have long experience in the region, in Europe, and in the world, and a lot to share with us today. Ambassador Paro is Croatia's ambassador in Washington. Among his previous positions, he served as the Croatian president's foreign policy advisor. Ambassador João Vale Almeida is the head of the delegation of the European Union to the United States. Prior to his appointment here in Washington, he served as the Director General for External Relations of the European Commission. Ambassador Peter Galbraith, first U.S. ambassador to Croatia, serving from 1993 to 1998, and mediated the Erdut Agreement in November 1995 that ended the Croatian War. Jonathan Moore is the acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasia. He's a career Foreign Service officer who once served as a desk officer for the former Yugoslavia, and more recently as Chargé d'Affaires and Deputy Chief of Mission at the U.S. Embassy in Bosnia until last year. And most recently, prior to his current position, directed the State Department's Office of South and Central Europe. Thank you very much again for joining us. I'll ask each of you to make about 5 minutes of opening comments, and then we'll turn it to questions. Please, Ambassador Paro.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm very grateful to the Institute for Peace for organizing this timely event. So I'm, of course, a little bit elated by the events of the last day. So I can't say, well, how happy I am for joining the European Union. So it is a dream come true. We believed from the outset of our independence that we should join the European community at that time. But that was a dream. That was very soon, cut by a harsh reality of war. I'm inspired in what I'm going to say by the venue, an Institute for Peace. European Union is about peace, and I must say that at the beginning, where the war started, the European Union was not ready to cope with the challenges of another war in Europe. But the European Union, as it is since the beginning, was there, to overcome the challenges of conflict, the challenges of crisis, and it found its way to also address in the best possible way the challenges of the post-war Croatia. And what we have achieved in the years following the war was due to the steady guidance, not only of the directives of the European Union, but the steady guidance of the values of the European Union. On that way, we are not alone with the European Union. I said today already one sentence that my English-speaking daughter thought that it's a mistake. I said that the staunchest ally of Croatia in Europe was the United States. has been all the way long. And we today, well, we have 3 ambassadors to Croatia. Well, Peter Galbraith as I would say, the most crisis managing ambassador that we had during the wartime and immediately after. Robert Bratke, who was extremely instrumental in seeing us to the NATO, and Jim Foley, who saw us to the end of the EU accession talks. And the transatlanticism, or what, as we like to say, Euro-Atlantic integration process is transatlantic, and it remains transatlantic. And it has been a great pleasure for me, another post-crisis diplomat, to work very, very closely in transforming our country from within. In transforming our country and making it ready for the EU accession, the two most important things were capability, building up the capability for the reconciliation with the former enemies, and the other is to make compromises with them and to make compromises from within. These two qualities are in the very heart of the European Union, and in these 13 years we have been able to learn those very well. When I think about Europe and the future of Europe, other than seeing prosperity stemming from the free market and the rule of law, I see the values of reconciliation and the values of reaching compromise through dialogue. This is very, very important. And I'm going to conclude in this way that these two things, reconciliation, compromise, are the values our neighbors have to learn how to employ both at home and in the relationship with the neighbors, other neighbors. So as soon as we do that, well, we are going to have to see the enlargement process just rush towards the future. So as we did. The moment we have learned how to reconcile, how to compromise, well, the rest was only technicality. And in that technicality, well, we enjoyed a fantastic technical support by the European Commission, and every single member state was our friend. Every single member state, even those who were very critical about us, because it was really challenging, extremely challenging to face the consequences of the war. This is very difficult, but we are actually the first post-war country and society joining the European Union. And I think we are a living proof that it is possible to do it. Well, unfortunately, it is human to start war, but it is humane to stop it. And so, well, I hope that our success is going to play a role of a beacon that will shed light on the rest of the Western Balkans. I believe that as historically Croatia was a frontier country, now we are not a frontier country. We are a border country, and the border is different from the frontier. So, we are EU border country, and EU borders tend to disappear. So this is in the very nature of the European Union to expand the area of peace, prosperity, free trade, free flow of people, goods, and capital. And I think that the time when we are going to see the whole area that was war-torn only a decade ago, very soon living in peace in the same family with the rest of Europe. And we look forward, I'm sure that João is going to talk about that, we look forward to strengthen our transatlantic relationship and to further integrate for the benefit of both of the United States and us and the whole world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Ambassador Valdo Almeida, please.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here, honor to be here, and a great satisfaction to be here in the day Croatia joins the European Union. I look around and I sort of scanned the audience, and I saw, first of all, enormous expertise on the Balkans, which I don't have, even if you compare myself with the members of this panel. You know, accept my ignorance on Balkans. Maybe I have a little bit of experience of European Union to bring to this panel. But looking around, I see excellent professionals of diplomacy, great observers of external relations, knowledgeable people about the Balkans again. And I think of the following. Sometimes we are a bit cynical about historical moments. And we tend to consider, okay, it's another member state, come on, what's the difference? I think we should pause a moment in days like this one. Forget the cynicism, forget the complacency, forget the, you know, I've seen it all kind of approach. And consider what is at stake here today. And I think this is another chapter of a very long book of the European Union being, in my view, the greatest, most successful peace building and conflict prevention enterprise of mankind. And I think Croatia is maybe the best to date example of such an accomplishment. I lived through the crisis of the 90s, and we could discuss it a lot. I lived through many phases of the European Union construction, been working for the EU for the last 30 years. And I can tell you, I can even imagine a few down the road that will happen. But that is not necessarily the most relevant aspect. The most relevant is our capacity so far, at least, and I hope long years in the future, to be capable of attracting and to be capable of being the driving force for reform and for reconciliation. It started with France and Germany. It now is further completed by the arrival of Croatia. And this is the essence of the European Union. As Ambassador Paro was saying, the rest are technicalities. And this is right. The rest is not essential. The essence of our project is to bring people together. Today, 500 million people, a few more millions today, in a vast territory of democracy, protection of human rights, freedom, market economy. This is what we are today. Before that, we had dictatorships of left and right, if we want to call it that way. We had world wars starting in Europe. We had regional wars starting in Europe. We had hatred, violence, intolerance. So what Croatia means today is the essence, the very essence of the European Union project. And that's why we should move away the cynicism and concentrate on the true meaning of today's event. You enrich the Union. I hope, I'm sure the Union will enrich you. And we come out of this richer, which is very good in terms of economic crisis and financial crisis we've got today. I will reserve my comments for later, and I want again to congratulate our Croat friends for such an achievement. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Galbraith.
Thank you. I find it a bit overwhelming because I also very much appreciate the extraordinary importance of this day. I've just come back from Dubrovnik. I was there, I think, 3 days ago.
Nice place.
On the very eve, it is a nice place. It was on the very last time that flying from Dubrovnik to Vienna, I would have to go through passport control, because today those borders are gone. And I couldn't help but think back to my first visit to Dubrovnik, which was in December of 1991. And in order to get there, coming down from Podgorica, there was a ceasefire arranged. At that time, I was still working for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and the Yugoslav side was still hopeful to keep the U.S. Out of the war. And the Croatian Navy or Croatian boats had to pick me up at the Dubrovnik River and go into the city as people had entered it centuries before from the old port. And it was just days after the bombardment of the city, and the worst bombardment of the old city in St. Nicholas Day. And so the physical transformation of Dubrovnik, although some of the scars are there if you know where to look at it, is a bit like the extraordinary transformation of Croatia. But it's also a transformation of the European Union, because December of '91 was the eve of the European community becoming the European Union. And 1992 was going to be the year of Europe. And I think it really was and I hope won't take this as undue criticism looking back 21 years, but it was a pretty dismal failure for Europe. The Troika, which at one point I think was Luxembourg, Portugal, and Netherlands, didn't, shall we say, unduly impress either Franjo Tudjman or Slobodan Milosevic. It was the International Conference for the Former Yugoslavia, which a UN-EU chaired body, was ineffective. Some of the mediation efforts, frankly, made the war worse. There was, I think, because of those circumstances, an extraordinary role for the United States. But in consolidating the peace and making this happen, the United States, in many ways, we're just another foreign country. It is the European Union and the values of the European Union, which Ambassador Paro spoke so well to, that really is the cause of the transformation. And that Europe has been able to build such vibrant institutions that it is absolutely anchoring in an irrevocable way the peace in Croatia. And this was something certainly that we understood at the time. President Tudjman from the start said that he really had, well, just a brief word about what the situation was like. Sometimes people would ask me in '93 or '94, would describe the situation. And I'd say, well, you know, it really looks like a Cyprus, that is a country with a permanent division between Serb-held areas and the Croatian government-held areas, next to a Lebanon, this time with the three-way war going on in Bosnia. And it looked very hopeless. And so and Croatia really had two goals at that time. One was to reintegrate the occupied territories, and secondly, to join European institutions. Unfortunately, some people had a third goal, which was to take a chunk of Bosnia. But in the end, I think it became clear that only two of the three were possible. And Croatia made a choice, that the two of the three that were critically important were unification of the country and joining the Euro-Atlantic institutions. It joined NATO, what, in 2005? But that was really very secondary by then. During the war, of course, it seemed very prominent. The real prize was the European Union. Part of it was that joining the European Union meant that certain criteria had to be met, and they were very difficult to meet. The most important, which we felt was key, It was key to the peace process, but it was really key to the kind of country Croatia was going to be. And that was the treatment of the Serb population. It was 12% in 1991. By 1995, it was probably 3 or 4%. And so you had both Serbs who had been in the rebel-held territories, that is the Krajina and Eastern Slavonia, and Serbs who had been in Croatia. And the war inevitably had made them targets. And so the question was, would their rights be fully respected? And would those who had left be allowed to return? And the Croatian government and Croatian people really made a conscious choice. And this wasn't, so I should say, this wasn't just about the minority. In fact, it really was about what kind of country Croatia was going to be. Just frankly, as civil rights in the United States was not just about African Americans, it was about what kind of country the United States was going to be. And Croatia, and I think here the role of the European Union was absolutely critical, made the decision that it was going to be a tolerant and inclusive country. I saw this in the 2000 presidential elections. Tudjman had died in December of 1999, where the candidates, all three of the main ones, competed on the notion of who would do the most to try and extend citizenship and encourage ethnic Serbs to return. And that's all been part of the process, cooperation with the War Crimes Tribunal, which in the end led to acquittals of General Gotovina, Generals Gotovina and Markic, but that was the process of justice. So it's been a long struggle, but one in which I think Croatia really has measured up to the values that that are European values, and I would also like to say American values, but we're not part of that community. We're just friends of that community. So I think this is an amazing development. I just would add that in 1997, Douglas Davidson, Ambassador Davidson, I think got me to give a speech at the Europe House about Croatia joining the European Union. I don't know quite why I was asked or did it, but anyhow, it said all the right things and all the good diplomatic niceties, but I'm not sure that I thought I'd be sitting at a panel with you, whom I knew as when you were working in the foreign ministry, and with Ambassador Davidson in the audience on the day that that actually happened.
Thank you, Ambassador. More, please.
Thank you. Well, first of all, it is a tremendous pleasure to be here and an honor to be at the U.S. Institute for Peace, to be part of a far more distinguished grouping here on the stage than I can claim to be a proper member of. Glad to be sitting in for Ambassador Phil Rieker, who was just in Zagreb as part of the celebrations yesterday. I would like to follow Ambassador Paro's lead in two respects. First of all, I would love to point out all the people in the audience who have been working these issues so long. I'm sort of new at it. It's only been 22 years for me. But there are two people here who I would particularly like to point out. Mike Holtzel, who spent years long before I joined the State Department working these issues on the Hill and is still working them very actively. Mike, thank you for everything you've done. And Ambassador Dan Fried, who is known to us from so much work at the State Department, early tours in the Balkans, service as the Senior Director at NSC for Europe and Assistant Secretary for Europe and Eurasia, and is still persisting on some of the most important issues for the administration. Thank you both for the work you've done on the Balkans and many other parts of the world as well. Please, yes. We're surrounded by distinguished diplomats, members of diaspora communities. This is really a wonderful audience, and of course, there's a broader audience thanks to the internet. So welcome to you as well. You don't have to turn your cell phones off. That's the good news for you. The second point, though, I'd like to echo is from Ambassador Paro's remarks at the very nice reception hosted the European Union delegation just a little earlier today, which is that for Croatia, it's not simply getting the membership card, and very warm congratulations on that. It's the question of the process, and this is a process that takes over 10 years, a question of not just introducing and harmonizing, but implementing legislation across society That has been a comprehensive effort. It has required the investment of time and energy by a number of governments in Croatia with the strong partnership and support of the member states of the European Union, and certainly the United States has been helping where we can. This fact that Croatia is now a member of the EU, the 28th member of the EU as of today, is a wonderful indication to all of the other diplomats here and persons beyond this room from the Western Balkans that this is something that can be pursued, this is something that can be achieved. The process of moving towards membership and gaining membership is something certainly the Union and its member states and the United States want to see for all of the countries of the Western Balkans. If I can talk about non-Croatian topics very briefly, because I know we want to get to people's questions, what Catherine Ashton has been able to do to get Serbia and Kosovo working towards normalization of their relations is an outstanding step forward. And just last week, of course, we heard from the Council in Brussels very positive decisions about both Serbia and Kosovo finding paths forward towards the European Union. That is an amazing step forward. We congratulate Albania on very professional conduct of elections, and in fact, extremely statesmanlike and magnanimous statements both from the Prime Minister, who will be stepping down, and from the prospective likely Prime Minister, Mr. Rama. We can attribute a lot of this to individual bilateral diplomacy, but a lot of it also is directly connected to the draw of the European Union, the leadership from Brussels, and the interest of member states. That's a very important process we support wholeheartedly, and it has brought us to this result for Croatia. So congratulations, Joško, to you and your country on this amazing result.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all of you. I want to throw out the first question to you, and that is to ask, since we are talking about EU integration, you've all expressed the continuing aspirations for the rest of the Western Balkans, the rest of the countries in the region to join the European Union. How can, specifically, concretely, Croatia play a constructive role in furthering that goal of getting the rest of the region into the European Union?
Well, other than presenting our success as an example, we are already undertaking a number of steps in terms of technical assistance to our neighbors, depending on what level of integration they stand now. So we have organized in Zagreb something that is called the Center of Excellence. Colloquially, it is actually the Center of Administrative Excellence, where we have gathered people who have gained experience in the long years of accession process. And we, with or without a contractual relationship with specific governments in the region, we do extend our experience on the matters that are relevant to their European ambitions. So this is certainly one aspect. The other aspect is actually presenting them with our internal and external political experiences, so which are not technical. When I say, well, please learn the value of compromise, I think this is a valuable experience to extend, because along the way to our European accession, we have been facing a number of challenges. First, there was something that we share with at least Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, and to a certain degree with Montenegro, and that is the legacy of war. So it is not about political elites exclusively, it is also about societies. But it is the political elites that have to show the way to the societies that are wounded and scarred by the war on how to lead. Well, and I must say, well, João has mentioned France and Germany, so it's a fantastic example. So, well, there have been so much bloodshed between those two great nations of Europe. So compared with the blood we shed, our bloodshed is small, but it is still alive in our society. So it is important to have courage of leadership, to go over the emotions of everyday life. So, you're dealing with wounded populations. So, and if the politicians do not elevate themselves above that, the people will continue living in the post-traumatic stress syndrome world. So this is, I think that we have showed how important it is to reconcile. Reconciliation is not an easy thing. The married couples would know what does it mean after a big fight to reconcile. It takes courage, it takes wisdom. So, but this is very, very important.
Thank you. Thank you. Ambassador Valdemar.
Thank you very much. I think the main contribution is to say to other countries in the region, first, that the Union is not closed. Our doors are not closed. Secondly, that a good effort is rewarded. And thirdly, that it is worth trying because we can reach our goals. I think these are simple messages that have to be understood, hopefully, by all the other candidates or potential candidates to joining the European Union. But it doesn't come easily. It's difficult. It requires political will, it requires courage, capacity to compromise. So it's not an easy project. But if you do it, the door is open. And I think this is the most important lesson I will withdraw from the Croatian example, apart from the more general views I expressed earlier about reconciliation and peace building. And I think the countries that I'm referring to, and some of them are represented here by their ambassadors, can certainly draw an example from Croatia. And I hope that example will inspire those countries in moving forward faster and with more determination in pursuit of this goal, which is a common goal of joining the European Union.
Thank you. Ambassador Galbraith, your thoughts on what Croatia can do to help accelerate the process of further integration?
The first point I'd make goes to the reconciliation process that Ambassador Paro spoke about. I was always struck when I would talk to people during the war and immediately afterwards. They always say, well, we never knew, we never cared who was a Croat, who was a Serb. You know, this really wasn't important. Then I'd say, well, then of course there's no problem with, for example, one of our goals, the return of Serbs who had left. And the answer was, after what they've done to us, of course there's a problem. It can't happen. And the point is that, and that's very understandable, is that the war, the fact of the war changes things. But time also is a great healer. And so here we are, we're 18 years after the end of the war. If you think 18 years after the end of the Second World War, and obviously a much more epic and bloody conflict, you know, France, the reconciliation between France and Germany was really quite far along. So, and the European community had already been created. I think the example of Croatia provides hope and a very good model. And I think Croatia, within its resources, as by the mindset to some degree in the 90s was, well, we have nothing to do with the Balkans. We just look now to Europe. And so for Croatia, of course, looks to Europe. But I think the mindset, at least as I understand it, is also to look to its neighbors. And I think it's important that that be part of the mindset. The second point, quite simply, is if you think of the expansion process, Montenegro may be the next most logical candidate, small, easily accommodated. The important country I think that can be gotten in is Serbia. that will make a huge difference. At the moment, it doesn't appear as if the various parties in Bosnia are prepared to take the steps. But once they're surrounded by the European Union, you think that that will really have an impact on Bosnia, and finally the various nationalists there will clean up their act and get on with the business. So I think that the real key is going to be Montenegro, but really then Serbia. And some of the signs I think are encouraging.
And you speak about Bosnia, but the other possibility is they take a different message from this, but we'll probably get into that discussion later on. Mr. Moore, please.
Well, again, briefly, there's a lot that Croatia can do, and technically it's already doing a lot. It's offered the acquis. Of course, it has to be translated from Croatian into Serbian and Montenegrin and other languages, but that and showing the kind of leadership and compromise that it has taken on a number of issues, bilateral issues, regional issues. I think it may be a little profound for someone in my limited position to say, and I apologize for that in advance, but the EU has also learned clearly in different phases of enlargement and bringing in new members, and I think one of the most important messages that Croatia has sent, and thank you, Ambassador, for that, is to not use its membership against new potential members. Not to say, of course, that that's ever happened. Some people might argue that it has, but certainly nobody from the State Department is going to say that. That Croatia has talked about having open arms and showing open opportunities and not using the prospect of membership for new prospective members as a tool to manipulate them. That is an important step forward. That kind of leadership, the messages that have already been shared by the other panelists about reconciliation, those are the messages that need to be seen and understood and absorbed by all the countries in the region, and certainly mentioning Bosnia-Herzegovina just briefly, having been there for 3 years, and up to not so long ago, seeing so many neighbors, including Montenegro and Serbia, making a path towards the EU and Croatia joining, should be a wake-up call, both to society and the leaders of Bosnia-Herzegovina, that avoiding compromise and being focused on those nationalist agendas is not going to make that country move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go to questions from the audience now so that we make sure we have enough time for everyone. The gentleman here, if you could just wait for the microphone to reach you.
Hi, I'm Bill Stubner. Ambassador Paro, congratulations. I think this really is a great day. And I don't want to be a downer, but I do want to raise one of the issues that Viola just kind of hinted about. There can also be problems for some of the neighbors. Now, as far as Croatia helping, I'm sure Croatia is going to help. Vesna Pusic, when I first met her in 1993, was already talking reconciliation. So I think she's going to be a great catalyst. But I am concerned about, I'm concerned largely about Bosnia-Herzegovina, about the divisions there. And so long as Serbs in Bosnia-Herzegovina are going to have a Serb passport and Serbia will get on the track to the European Union, they've already gotten onto the track, they can get the benefits of the European Union. Certainly most Croats have Croatian passports and they already have those benefits. Does that take away from the desire of two of the three main groups, the constituent peoples in Bosnia-Herzegovina, to actually move ahead towards the European Union? Since 2 out of 3 will already gain those benefits with never creating a unified country?
Thank you.
Well, I don't think that having a passport itself makes a European. Secondly, I don't think that the people having Croatian citizen or having Serbian citizens are very quick to leave their homes. And, well, they are going to continue living in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And what is the value of the European passport when you don't live in Europe? I mean, I don't think that this is a crucial issue. On the contrary, I would believe that those people holding European passport should ask themselves how European we are in Bosnia. So I think that is not something that will affect in any way the internal situation, except maybe that would allow for a greater ability to move around. So what is crucial, however, when Croatia set itself on the path to the European Union, well, very soon they understood, the political elites understood, that they should not be meddling into the internal affairs of Bosnia. In the year 2000, that was a year of big change in Croatia. So, well, one of the first messages that went towards Bosnian Croats was, well, Zagreb is not your capital, it is Sarajevo. If you want to change your position, go there and fight within the democratic institutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I must say that we have never reached satisfaction as of their willingness to turn Sarajevo as the capital. But certainly we are still full of hope. And I must say that we are still waiting for the political elites in Belgrade to utter the same message to the Serbs of the Serbian entity of Bosnia. It never happened so far. So I must say that we are very much encouraged by the resolve of the new leadership in Belgrade to face the consequences of conflict and go over it. I really congratulate Serbia and the European Union, so I can say we congratulate ourselves for the start of the Serbian accession. This is very, very important news for the region. I believe, that not even surrounding Bosnia from all sides with the EU member states will suffice. What needs to be done, by my humble opinion, is to devise a new tailor-made SAA for Bosnia that would link intrinsically the internal integration of the country with the integration in the European Union in a very clear way, so that everyone has it clear what will follow when you achieve this or that step. So I think that building up the internal functionality of Bosnia-Herzegovina is crucial, and there is no more attractive power to do so as it is the European Union. European Union has been an accelerator of our democracy, our administrative capacity, and I don't see why it wouldn't be for Bosnia-Herzegovina. They are people like us. They are maybe more wounded than we were. So, and we have to help them in that regard.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Ambassador Valdo Almeida, I'd like to hear from you, from the European Union's perspective, how do you see this potential role of very closely linking internal integration within Bosnia-Herzegovina to EU integration, and does the EU have the will and the capacity to do that?
Well, I'll be very simple because, again, these people know much more about the region than I know. But as far as Bosnia-Herzegovina is concerned, I think they know what they need to do in order to move faster towards the prospect of joining the European Union. This has been discussed again and again. This has been stated again and again. And we are ready to help. We have been helping. But ultimately, it depends on the people of Bosnia-Herzegovina, on the leaders of Bosnia to decide whether or not they want to pursue it in this matter. I think the example of Croatia, and before that, the example of Slovenia, show the way forward. The Western Balkan countries can, if they make an effort, if they reconcile and reform, fulfill the criteria, and if that is the case, the Union will open the door for them. So the issues are clear. We encourage them to continue on that track. but the effort, the essence of the effort, has to come from inside the country.
Ambassador Galbraith, do you have any thoughts on that, or Mr. Moore, on that question?
Well, the fundamental problem is that one part of Bosnia, a majority, wants to have closer integration, and another part, which holds its positions as a result significant of what it did militarily and in very inhumane circumstances, doesn't. And so it's a little hard. I mean, in some sense, you're punishing one side, which really was the legitimate side, because of the behavior of the other side, and that is morally and practically a problem. I think Ambassador Paro was very, very right to say, you know, the message that went from Zagreb in 2000 needs to go from Belgrade, and that probably has to be part of the, you know, overall European integration process. And in the end, that people in Srpska, after all, you know, those who are in their 30 really they would have been children at the time of the war, that they're going to say, well, what is this really all about? I mean, what was it that all this destruction was about, and what is our obstinacy all about, and when we're in an entirely different world? And frankly, there is a precedent for it. I mean, I think the existence of the European Union was really very critical to solving the problem in Ireland. When, after all, once North and the Republic were all part of Europe with no border between them, you know, all those issues that had divided them, cause of so much bloodshed, became much less important. They didn't entirely go away. They haven't yet. But it's quite a different world from what it was, say, in the 1970s.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
Very quickly, Bill, thank you for your question. I think actually it ties together, you know, the basic reason why we're here, focusing on Croatia, but also the impact on the rest of the region. The Dayton framework is complicated. It was arrived at under very difficult circumstances. It was the best deal that could be made at the time. It does have flexibility. The Dayton Constitution can be amended. The basic structures of Bosnia-Herzegovina are in place and are not going to change, having one country and two entities and the rest of it. On this specific question, the EU has been extremely helpful and has played a central role since in 2010 it set a number of criteria that Bosnia-Herzegovina have to reach as a country in order to move closer to membership. The remaining most obvious criterion has to do with a decision by the European Court of Human Rights that the Dayton Constitution is not in accordance with the European Convention of Human Rights. That was declared by the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, the so-called Sejdić-Finci case, where under Dayton you have to be a member of one of the three constituent peoples, Serb, Croat, or Bosniak, in order to be a member of the presidency. That is in direct violation to European rules and standards, and for that matter, American rules and standards, that anyone from any ethnicity should be able to run. To be candid, it's primarily the Bosnian Croats that have the strongest objection to that changing. And this is a subject we've discussed with Zagreb and will continue discussing with Zagreb on many other fronts, on other issues than the EU. Exactly as Ambassador Galbraith has pointed out, there are difficulties in the Republika Srpska with the process of Euro-Atlantic integration, more on the NATO front. These are very topical and very key questions. Part of the fundamental issue here is that to reach full European standards, all constituent peoples and all other groups in Bosnia are going to have to accept the idea that no one has a lock, no one has a guaranteed seat in the tri-presidency. And of course, if the tri-presidency changes or not, that's also subject to discussion and amendment. But it's a very complicated issue where Croatia clearly can play a very helpful role. So good that it's come up today.
Thank you. Any other questions? Next question? Yes, please.
Avni Mustafa with the National Albanian American Council. I have to shift your view geographically a little bit south so we can go down as far as Kosovo. And I'm curious as to what else can the EU in Brussels do to get the 5 countries that haven't recognized Kosovo yet into the EU? What can the EU do more to help Kosovo get into the EU?
Who'd like to take the first stab at that?
He's the specialist now. It's not easy to be part of the union.
In that regard, I would like to say, like to bring to your attention the fact that in the recent couple of years, the European Union, through its external service, has been building its capacities to micromanage, even to micromanage. That has never happened before. In the time of our conflict, the European Union, the European community was absolutely unable to micromanage. That was the role of the United States. They were capable of moving people around, cajoling them, coercing them, and making them do things. Now we have seen, and I think this is a fantastic news, we have seen Catherine Ashton working as a micromanager of a deal that has made possible Serbia to finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. Finally, the Kosovars are seeing a possibility to start associating themselves with the European Union. And, sorry to say that, but as an EU member state, we are bringing in an expertise, a specific expertise.
That's why I gave you the floor.
I know. So where our neighbors are now, and our word has a real credibility of someone who has had the experience. So in that regard, I'm really optimistic about the EU and the involvement of the EU in the region.
Mm-hmm. Ambassador Valdemar.
My specialist has spoken, so now, but let me sort out this point. It's a great point made by Joško. This issue of expertise. If you look around, sometimes people ask, what does Croatia bring to the European Union? A lot of things, in different areas, of course. But one of them is a particular expertise in the region.
Not economic.
Well, let's see. Of course, Slovenia is already in. We already benefit from Slovenian expertise. But if you go around the European Union, and when Cathy Ashton, chairing the Foreign Affairs Minister, she brings a topic to the floor, she knows that among the now 28, there is always someone that knows better that particular file. You know, Belgians are experts on Congo. The Portuguese will tell you a lot about Brazil or about the Portuguese-speaking African countries. Croatia and Slovenia will bring us a lot about the Western Balkans. Poland will tell us a lot about Ukraine. And I see a number of countries here. I'm not going to refer to all of them. Each of them brings a particular expertise. And this is part of what we sort of intake when an enlargement takes place. So this is extremely important, and I wanted to underline that. Well, as far as Kosovo is concerned, I think we in the European Union are extremely pragmatic as well, you know, step by step. The whole history about the European Union is incremental.
We have learned to step.
Yeah, so we have to build and consolidate each step we take and then move to the next one. And I think and I'm very happy to see my boss and very dear friend Cathy Ashton being praised for her work. I can tell you that she worked intensely for this to happen. And I've been on the phone and on the mail with her all these years, and I know how much time she spent on all this. So I was so happy to see her being successful. But she's only instrumental. I mean, if there is no will from the sides to move forward, and we were referring to another country a while ago, it simply won't happen. But the Union can be instrumental, can provide the drive and the reason, justification for an extra effort from the different partners. So we are very happy to see progress made only last week regarding Kosovo as well. I think we are on the right track. Let's not anticipate stages. We've known from history that that's a bit dangerous. Let's build every step of the way, consolidate, and think what we can do next.
Mr. Moore, did you have some thoughts on that particular subject?
Sure. Just quickly, I think it was very important that Catherine Ashton focused on the issue of normalization rather than recognition when it came down to the talks between Pristina and Belgrade. Speaking as a representative of the United States and the State Department here, we certainly want all the countries of the world to recognize Kosovo as a sovereign independent state. We're working very hard with Pristina on that. We've already seen, because of Catherine Ashton's good work in getting both sides together, greater understanding in not just Europe and the rest of the world. Sometimes that means recognition, that Egypt just recognized Kosovo, for example, Pakistan, Yemen, Tanzania. The process is inexorable and is continuing forward. But for those member states of the European Union that for whatever domestic or bilateral or other reason are not yet in a position or do not foresee themselves to be in a position to take that step, they are also seriously looking at what below full recognition is possible. So we encourage that process that Bratislava has reached out and invited the president of Kosovo to visit a number of times, that there have been engagements with Athens. This is still important. It's up to member states. Brussels is not going to be able to dictate that, but it's an ongoing process and certainly strengthened by, as we just heard from the EU ambassador, the tremendous work done by Catherine Ashton.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would like to remind just that in 1996 we have signed a normalization act with Serbia, and it was only 2.5 years later that the recognition came. So talking about normalization is the first step, which almost inevitably follows the dictate of the reality. So, I'm personally very enthusiastic and hopeful that this is going to happen rather soon than later.
Thank you. We have another question? Yes, up at the back, please.
Hello, Edward Damage, Judge, U.S. Court of Federal Claims. I was wondering if joining the Eurozone was part of the requirement for Croatia to join the EU, and if it was not a requirement, does Croatia intend to do so?
Maybe
Yes,
I'll explain
please,
part
if
of
you
the
could.
question, and my good colleague will follow up. Every country joining the European Union is supposed to join the euro currency, ultimately, sometime in the future. For that to happen, they have to fulfill a number of criteria. Economic nature, they are spelled out in the treaty in a very clear way, and they will have to be assessed against their fulfillment of those criteria on a regular basis by the European Commission. This is the rule, except if the treaty includes any consideration of opting out from that, which of course is the case for other countries in the European Union. But if that is not the case, and this is not the case for Croatia, Croatia is bound to join the euro sometime in the future when the criteria are met, and they will be judged by the European Commission and the European Union as a whole at a given point in time. So this is about the facts and the framework under which Croatia joined as far as the euro is concerned.
And of course, two of the recent new members of the European Union, Romania and Bulgaria, still are outside of the Eurozone as of this point, yes? Ambassador Paro, did you have any thoughts about the progression and how this is likely to proceed?
I think João said everything. We are bound to join. We do not fulfill criteria at this point. I wish we do, but that's not the case. Croatian currency, kuna, is linked closely with euro. Our economy is linked closely with the Eurozone, so we are highly dependent. Actually, we are a Eurozone country. So, and it is just a matter of how quickly our economy is going to recover, step firmly on our feet, and then I think joining the euro is going to follow. The euro crisis is one of those usual cyclic financial crises that hit every economy, and I have no doubts to believe that Europe, as it has showed in the last year or two, is able to overcome the challenges of this crisis. And I hope that European recovery is also going to reflect on our recovery, because, as I said, our economy is strongly linked to the Eurozone. Our exports have dropped because of the crisis in the Eurozone. And as soon as the Eurozone economies are going to pick up, we are going to pick up. And I hope, I cannot make forecasts, but I hope that it won't take too long for us to join the euro. Well, in the meantime, it is possible that the criteria are going to become more complex, more protective, which is, after all, good for all those who exceed the eurozone.
Thank you. Any next question? Yes, sir.
My name is Zvonko Labas. I'm a member of National Federation of Croatian Americans. Back to Bosnia. Before the war, as everyone knows, there was 820,000 Croatians living in Bosnia and Herzegovina, roughly. Today, there's about 470,000 left. There's a great concern about the Croatian community in Bosnia and Herzegovina, that they are slowly becoming minority. And that's the concern by a Catholic Church and other contacts in Bosnia and Herzegovina leadership. To get Croatians probably to more cooperate in future of Bosnia and Herzegovina integration, there should be a way to assure Croatian population in Bosnia and Herzegovina that they will not become a minority and be treated as such. What is your comments on that?
Actually, Ambassador Galbraith, why don't you start us off on that? What do you think of this issue?
Well, it's an interesting question, because to some degree this was a result of the decline in the Croatian population in Bosnia was a result of Tudjman's policies, an unintended consequence of treating the Croats and Bosnians as if they were equally Croatian citizens. And Croatia being more prosperous and more peaceful, much safer during the war and more prosperous afterwards, a lot of there was both the push of the war and of the hard times in Bosnia, but very much the pull of Croatia itself. And then even perverse incentives, like a period of time Bosnian Croats were offered houses in the Krajina. So it's a process. I don't know that it's going to be easily reversed. I think that the Bosniaks perhaps are committed. I don't know quite about the Bosnian Serbs, but to the idea that the Croatians should remain one of the constituent peoples, even if they're numerically much smaller. It runs into conflict with what the European Human Rights Court has decided and what Bosnia would have to do to join the European Union. But the decline is a reality, and I don't see that it's going to be reversed.
João, do you have any thoughts on how much of a barrier that is in your experience in working in the region? How much of an obstacle is that?
Well, exactly as Ambassador Galbraith said, there were those pulls in the past. The problem now is somewhat of a different one. It's evolved from that basis. it's hard sometimes as a diplomat to talk to real people, to get away from journalists and other diplomats and bureaucrats. But to the extent I was able to succeed in doing that, the real frustration of people in Široki Brijeg and Mostar and Ljubuški and other places in Herzegovina that have an almost completely ethnic Croat population is that the country is not moving anywhere. They're very close to Croatia. They see all the prosperity of Croatia. They see Croatia moving forward, and they see Croatia, and of course they're all happy about this, joining the EU. And they see Bosnia and Herzegovina going absolutely nowhere. So really what it comes down to is where the ability of not just the people, of course, but their political leaders to reconcile the absence of progress towards the European Union in Bosnia and Herzegovina and their concerns about modern day or historical treatment of ethnic Croats, whether as a constituent people or in other terms. So the real future that they all want is to be secure in the EU, where they know that those rights and freedoms are guaranteed. They don't feel that in Bosnia now. If they could have if there could be more compromise between the ethnic groups in Bosnia now, that moves them towards the EU, so we can be back here in a number of years celebrating the entry of Bosnia and Herzegovina into the European Union. That's I think where we all need to be. But those people are voting with their feet. When I visit Dubrovnik, people compliment me on how well I speak the language, and when I ask them where they're from, they all say, oh, I'm from Mostar, I'm from, in some cases, Sarajevo or Travnik. They have the opportunity. They're now living and working in Croatia. So there are those polls as well. The real focus is getting everybody in Bosnia and Herzegovina to focus on the same prize which Croatia has won today.
I think, unfortunately, we only have time for about one more question before we wanted to wrap up just a little bit early as well. Do we have one more question from the audience?
My friend?
Yes, please.
Microphone for you.
Just one quick question. Do you think that the Dayton Peace Accords are working 20 years downstream, or do you think they have to be revisited?
It's a question for the Americans, right?
Well, for sure.
The Europeans were there too.
Mr. Moore, why don't you start us out on that, and Ambassador?
I think I sort of said this before. The Dayton Peace Accords are not a perfect peace agreement. I don't know if there ever has been in history. I'm sure there are many opinions if there has ever been a perfect peace agreement. The fundamental framework for Bosnia and Herzegovina is solid and functions. There are individual political party leaders who, unfortunately, and our ambassador, Patrick Moon, who's spoken eloquently to this, are much more interested in lining their own pockets than they are on moving forward and making compromises. Some people, it is rumored, may be even intimidated by the rule of law under the EU, where famously a former prime minister of Croatia is now behind bars. Speculating there may well be people in Bosnia and Herzegovina who would find themselves in similar places if the rule of law were also imposed on Bosnia and Herzegovina. But the bottom line is, look, Dayton is the best agreement that was possible at the time under very unique circumstances that no one wants to repeat, ending a very active war, and with the signing on of not only parties inside the country, but in the region and the United States, the EU, and others as well. So it's the framework under which Bosnia operates. There is flexibility, again, opportunities to amend the Constitution. But yes, we are very convinced in the United States, there's no question that Bosnia and Herzegovina can continue under the Dayton framework, but still make its progress through compromise towards the European Union.
Ambassador Galbraith?
Lots of constitutions really are treaties, actually including the American Constitution in its origin. So the question is, how do they evolve? They can go in different directions. I mean, as somebody who was at Dayton, certainly it was my view that this was not a brilliant way to run a country. In fact, it was, I mean, I thought then and I think now, I didn't say it then, I guess I'm liberated enough to say it now, it was a terrible constitutional arrangement. And what tends to happen over time is there are successive generations of policymakers who then say, oh, well, we got to uphold the Dayton, the Dayton framework and so on, as if it were some act of genius. It was an act of genius in accomplishing what it needed to do, which was to end the war. And at the signing, President Izetbegovic said, I thought the most poignant words. He said, "This is an unjust agreement, but it would be even more unjust to continue the war." And I think that's absolutely true. I mean, it was brilliant. It ended the war. I'm proud to have been a participant in that process. But I don't think that Bosnia and Herzegovina should be shackled to it. You are much more au courant with this than I am. I'm just living in Vermont, but well, I travel a little bit. I mean, my impression is that it may not have the necessary flexibility. Just like our Constitution may not have the necessary flexibility. But in any event, I think the real answer to this is going to be, passage of time, a generation in Bosnia, particularly in Srpska, say, what in the hell was that all about? And why are we being held back? And the extraordinary magnetic pull of the European Union, first in Croatia, then Montenegro, then Serbia.
I'd like to just wrap up and first of all thank everyone very much for the time, for being with us today, for the audience who has joined us on the webcast as well, and thank all of you very much. I'd like to wrap up just briefly with just 1 minute from each of you on if we were to get back together here in just 5 short years, what do you think will be the status of EU integration in this region 5 years down the road, considering the incredible stresses, the incredible tensions that still exist there, and the stresses on the European Union itself?
Well, I'm not a crystal ball gazer, but I would assume that in 5 years' time, we are going to see I'm adamant about Montenegro and Serbia being at somewhere probably halfway to the negotiation chapters. I hope that by then Macedonia is going to consolidate its democratic practices and would also embark on the same path. And also by then, I hope that much more before 5 years, they are going to find a compromise with Greece over the name issue, which is holding them back. I think that could also be a good task for the External Service to help them to overcome that issue. Kosovo and Serbia might at that time all recognize each other as sovereign states, and someone mentioned shackles, and throw away the shackles of negative interdependence, and let's hope that Bosnia Herzegovina would go over the limitations of the peace treaty, Dayton Peace Accords, and with assistance of the neighboring countries, most notably 2 signatories of the Dayton Peace Accord. And I have to say this, Croatia and Serbia are signatories of the Dayton Peace Accord not because they were facilitators, but because the Americans and the others wanted to be sure that we are going to respect that. So we were all other things than facilitators. So I hope that we are going to play as both Croatia as a European Union member state and Serbia as soon to be a European Union state, a very constructive role in putting that country together and ready for joining us on the same path. In 5 years' time, that could be achieved.
Mr. Moore?
Well, I would agree certainly with Ambassador Paro, Albania as well, all of the countries in the future to be farther along. If it's only 5 years from now, deeply involved in one chapter or another and fighting at a technical level over specific issues, but hopefully reading the writing on the wall that every new member has to follow in the path of previous members. I would just also like to say here at the end, it's amazing what is possible over time. When I first got to Lithuania as a diplomat in 1995, and Ambassador Paviljonis's father was a rector at Vilnius University and helped us have Secretary Albright at the time visit. Nobody really thought that that country had the prospect of moving into the EU anytime soon. It's 2013. You've been in the Union for quite a while, and congratulations, Ambassador, on your first day as the President of the Council of the EU.
Ambassador Galbraith.
It's said that pessimism is for a diplomat what cowardice is for a soldier. So I'm going to embrace what Ambassador Paro and Mr. Moore have said. There's always a temptation to see the world as it is and assume it's going to stay that way. And I think the very dynamic process which, again, looking at the world in 1998 with Croatia, or 1997 when Doug Davidson got me to give that speech, to think that Croatia would ever be in the European Union, you didn't quite see the path, and yet in a very short period of time, 2000, the situation in Croatia completely turned around. And so, I think there's always grounds for optimism. So I'm going to embrace the optimism always expressed here already, and say that part of the discussion we'll be having in 5 years from now will be discussion of what happened after Britain left.
Ambassador Ambassador Almeida, if you just, I'm going to let you say the last word here. I'd just like to remind everyone that if you have the dots on your name tags, please exit the room down here next to the stage, and others please exit at the top of the hall. And we thank you all very much again for joining us and for the webcast as well. Ambassador Almeida.
Thank you very much. In order to do my job, I have to do two things. I have to believe and I have to be cautious. So I firmly believe in European integration. I firmly believe in all the Western Balkans joining the European Union in the future, and I firmly believe that the next 5 years we'll see progress. But as I have to be cautious, I will tell him in 5 years how I see the situation. Because, again, we need to move step by step. And we've seen with the history of the Union how that is. We've seen in the last few years how that is, dealing with the aftershocks of the financial crisis. So we have to believe, but we have to be cautious so that every progress comes as a good surprise. Thank you.
Thank you very much.